Hey, this is Jonathan Ariel, and I'm back with another video in the series on how to create a Moodle course. In the last video, I showed you how to set up categories in your question bank on Moodle, and now it's time to come back and actually write some questions. So if you remember, we can't access the question bank from the main course page. We have to go through the Actions menu, and unfortunately, we have to press another button to get there. So we can come down to the bottom of the list, and the question bank is right here. And let me switch back to the Categories tab. So there are the categories that I set up in the last video, and now let's go inside the Unit 1 folder or category and open that. So let's create a new question here, and that brings up a list of every type of question that Moodle can generate. Now, some of the question types in this list are Moodle specific, like they don't exist outside of Moodle. And I'll make another video later on some of these question types that may be unfamiliar to you. I'm going to scroll down to something a little more familiar to every teacher and choose multiple choice. Now, heads up, there are a lot of settings in this menu that we're going to go through today. Sometimes the outer appearance of Moodle is that it's very simple looking with just a bunch of text on a screen. And all of the superpowers are hidden under these deep level menus. And so it can take a little while to learn your way through all of these settings. The good news is you'll catch on pretty quickly, and when we're done with making this one question, I'll show you a quick way to copy the question so that you can change it, but all of the other settings will be copied over and you won't have to repeat this process every time. So the first thing in the list is we have the category. And so because we started inside the Unit 1 Notes Quiz category, we're already there. But you could change it to be a different category if you needed to. We'll leave it the way it is. Now for the question name, this is something that's only going to be visible to you as a teacher. Students will never see the question name under any circumstance. I do recommend a couple of guidelines. First, you should make the question name mean something to you that sort of helps you tell what the question is about. When you have a list of questions that you're trying to pick from, this question name is all that you're going to be able to see. And so if you try to make it reflect something in a phrase or less, it'll help you with your question organization. Like I'm going to write a question about identifying nouns. So I'll say it's identify the noun, and the noun in the sentence is going to be cat. Now in the question text, I can just type in the question itself. So I'll say identify the noun in the following sentence. And then I'll type the sentence. The cat was asleep. Now I can format the text if it helps. I could make that noun bold-faced. I could even get some complex formatting with subscripts, or I could change the justification of the text. I could make a bulleted list, or I could even import an image. And so you can build some relatively complex questions that way. For now, I'm going to move on down. Now for the default point setting, I would recommend you leave this set as a 1. That setting controls the weight of the question, but it's better leaving every question to be a default point of 1. And later, if you want this question to count for more or less credit inside of a quiz that you assign it to, you can make that change in the quiz itself. Now for general feedback, this is the feedback that will show up to a student after they've turned a quiz in. And I generally try to write quiz questions in a way that the feedback box would help a student who missed this question on their first attempt. If they read it, it would help them on their second attempt to come back and answer that question correctly on their first try. So I'll write nouns are people, places, things, or ideas. Now for the ID number, I don't actually know what this is for, and I've never had a good reason to need to come and figure it out. So I'm going to move past this. For one or multiple answers, usually a multiple choice question has one correct answer, but there are times when it would be appropriate to have multiple answers allowed. Now I'll make a video about that later. It's a little bit complicated on the setup, and that's more than I want to get into today. We'll leave it on one answer only. Now for shuffle the answer choices, the default is to let that happen. But there are situations where you would want to prevent a question from being able to shuffle its answer choices. It might create confusion if they were shuffled. Right now, I'll leave it on shuffle. For number the choices, you can stay with the standard lowercase, or you can pick anything else that's in this list. So I'll leave it the way it is. Now, scrolling down, we've got our answer choices. So for choice 1, I'm going to type in the because it was the first word in the sentence. And for the grade, that needs to stay as none because it's an incorrect answer. Now into the feedback box, I could type in a specific feedback that will show up to a student during the quiz. If they pick this answer and it's incorrect, then you can make this feedback display sort of as a helpful message that might direct them to help figure out the correct answer more quickly. I could say, remember, nouns are people, places, things, or ideas. Now for answer choice 2, that was the word cat, and that is the correct answer, so I'm going to change the grade to be 100%. That means a student is going to get 100% of the points for this particular question. Let me scroll down to choice 3. That was the word was. The grade stays as none, and I'll move on to choice 4. That was the word asleep. That's also an incorrect answer, so we'll leave its grade as none. Now notice here that Moodle has a 5th answer choice. If we leave it blank, there will only be 4 answer choices displayed when the question shows up. If you needed more answer choices, you could add them with this button here. We're almost done. Let's open the combined feedback section. Now on a question, as a student answers it, if they get the answer correct, Moodle will display a green check mark along with the words, your answer is correct. And if a student answers a question incorrectly, they'll get a red X along with the message, your answer is incorrect. And so you can change these if you like, but I'm going to leave them just set the way they are. Let me close this back. Now in the multiple tries section, let me open that. Moodle's default is to have a penalty of 1/3 for every incorrect answer. When you create a quiz where a student can try a question multiple times during the same attempt, this is how much of the credit will be taken away for every incorrect answer. Now, I've experimented with this number over the years, and I started with the 1/3 penalty, but I found that it wasn't quite harsh enough. As a teacher, you're always trying to create a balance of something that's challenging but fair. Over the years, I experimented, and I found that 50% for a penalty is a much better balance between challenging and fair. Now, do take some time to think about what you make this setting for every question, because unfortunately, once you create this question, if you decided to change the penalty later, there is no way in Moodle to select all of the questions you've already written and change the penalty. You would have to go back to each individual question and make this change. You also want to make every question you write the same penalty, because it's very confusing for students if they take a quiz that has 2 questions with different penalties. So let me close this section, and we're almost done. There are 2 save buttons at the bottom, and the first button, Save Changes and Continue Editing, that's because you might spend a few minutes setting up a question, and after a while you might worry about losing all of that work if your internet connection goes away or your computer unexpectedly shuts down. So you could press the Save Changes and Continue Editing button, and Moodle would upload everything you've done and keep it, and then when you're really finished, you could press Save Changes. So Moodle's brought us back to the question bank, and you can see the question down here at the bottom of the screen. Now that took a fair amount of time to create one question, and so I want to point out here that we can quickly make a copy of the question by pressing the duplicate button. And so now we can change the question quickly, but all of those individual settings we had to go through, they're all copied and I don't have to go through them all over again. So I'm going to change the question name to be tree for the noun. And then I'll come to the sentence and say the tree is tall. So coming down, we don't have to change anything here. Nothing here has to change. I just have to change some of the answer choices. So the correct answer is no longer cat, but it's tree. And I need to change the last word to tall. I think I forgot to mention it previously, but if you mark the answer choices to not shuffle on this question, they're going to display in the order that they are on this screen. Let me scroll on down. That really important setting about the penalty, notice that it's been copied over because we created this as a copy of the previous question. So I'm all done here, and so now we have a second copy of the question. Now something we can do here is we can look on the preview setting and see how this question will appear on a quiz. So let me choose the incorrect answer and use the check button. So there's the feedback that showed up for that particular answer choice. And now I can go answer the question correctly, and I got the feedback your answer is correct. Now you can see here that Moodle took away half the credit for this question because I did make an incorrect choice on my first try. So let me close this preview. Now it's a good idea to always preview your questions after you write one, just to make sure that it works properly. If you realize something wasn't correct about that question, you could use the settings or the edit button to go back and bring up that editing screen to go fix the question. At this point, I'd like to show you a couple of other basic question types that you can play with in Moodle. So another common type of question in a course is matching. So let's add one of those. And matching questions are actually a whole lot simpler in Moodle than multiple choice. So for the question name, I'm just going to say this is called the state mottos. And then the question text, I'll say match each state motto with the correct state name. And we'll come down and look at the options. Default points we're going to leave as 1. Matching questions don't always have to have feedback. Sometimes they're pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to leave the shuffle for the answer choices. I'll leave that set to the default. And so now for the question, I'm going to type in a state motto. We'll go with the peach state. And then the correct answer would be Georgia. And for question 2, we'll say that's the Yellowhammer state. And that's Alabama. And then I'll have a third question. That's the Sunshine State. And that's Florida. Notice here in Moodle that you can provide extra wrong answers by giving an answer with a blank question. And so I'm going to set up question 4 as a blank question, but I'm going to put South Carolina as the answer. And then the 5th and 6th question, they won't even be included when we preview the question because they're blank. Now we've got a combined feedback section, and it's exactly like the one on the multiple choice question, so I'm going to skip that for now. For multiple tries, because we created this as a brand new question, if you're going to go with a different setting than the default, you're going to have to set that here. So we can close that again. And now we can save the changes. Notice here that now we have 3 questions in the question bank, but the icon for multiple choice displays this way, and we can tell this is a matching question because the icon is different. So let's preview this question. Alright, so here's our matching question, and if I choose an answer choice, we get a drop-down list, and there's our incorrect answer choice that we put in just for a little bit of extra challenge. Now I'm going to speed things up a little bit and just close this preview because I want to show you one more type of question. From the list, we're going to choose short answer. And for the question name here, I'm going to come up with something like sky color. And then I'm going to write the question text, the color of the sky on a clear day. Default points we'll leave set as 1. And I'm going to skip typing something in for the general feedback because it works the same way as previous questions. Now, for a short answer question, this case sensitivity is an important issue. If upper or lower case doesn't really matter, then you should leave it set to unimportant. If the answer to this question was a proper noun, you would want to say, yes, case must match. But I'll leave it to the default because it doesn't matter if a student capitalizes or uses lowercase for a color. So for the answer choice, for answer 1, we need to put in the correct answer, and the grade should be 100%. Now, you really don't have to put any other answer choices in besides the correct answer. You can put in other answer choices for common errors and then display a separate feedback message for that wrong answer, but I want to show you something different about Moodle. For a short answer question, you can actually type in a commonly misspelled answer, like this spelling of blue, and you can award full credit to that answer even though it's misspelled. Now scrolling down, we have the multiple tries that we need to set, and I'm going to put that 50%, and we'll save changes. Alright, so let's preview that question. So Moodle's given a text box to type into, so I'm going to type in the answer, but I'll use the incorrect spelling, and you can see that Moodle gave full credit for that answer. Now this button will simulate turning in an entire quiz attempt because I want to see the feedback that shows up. So right here, the correct answer is blue. Moodle shows this default to students. It's not something you have to type in. And if you're wondering why it didn't choose the incorrect spelling, if Moodle has two correct answers for a short answer question, it's always going to display the top level answer at this point on the screen. So let's close this preview. And then I want to make a change to this question to show you how it can work differently. Let me rewrite this sentence. On a clear day, the sky is usually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 underscore characters. And without changing anything else in the question, I'm just going to save changes. And now I'll preview that question again. If you notice, Moodle built the text box directly into the question itself, and I could type directly into it and then answer the question. Again, I got that to happen by typing 5 underscore characters together into the question itself. So let's close this preview. And then I want to show you one last type of pretty standard question that you could use in Moodle. It's true-false. Now, I'm not going to take the time to create this question. I just want to point out one thing about it. It has a name. You type in the question text here, and then you can give general feedback for that question. And you do have to pick whether the answer is going to be true or false. You can include specific feedback for each type of answer for true or false, but this is the one thing about this question that's a little bit confusing at first. Under the multiple tries, if you notice that it's preset to be 1, that's because if a student was to take a true-false question and miss it, it's pretty guaranteed that they're going to get it right on their second attempt, and so Moodle isn't going to give any credit for that situation. And so true-false questions on Moodle really are all or nothing. Now at this point, I want to go back to the question bank because you have a little bit of homework before the next video. Now there is a longer way to get there. You could go back to the main course page and then open the question bank by clicking on several different things. But notice right here, we have question bank up at the top of the screen. And so I can just press it and then go back to the question bank. So let's switch over to the categories tab. Now, if you can see the 4 that's right here, that means I've written 4 questions into that Unit 1 quiz folder. And so your homework before you watch the next video is to go to your own Moodle course. If you haven't created categories yet to help you organize your own question bank, you should do that. And then go write some questions. For something like the Notes quiz folder, just write 3 or 4 different questions about different things using different question types. Just experiment and see what Moodle can do. And then go into the Skills quiz folder and open that first skill category. Now, in that folder, you want to write 2 or 3 questions that all address the same skill. They could sort of be copies of each other, like if you make a true question, you could quickly copy it and alter it to make the answer false. Again, you just want 2 or 3 questions that all address one skill. Change folders to the next skill and write 2 or 3 questions to address that skill. And repeat for the other folders. Now in the next video, I'm going to show you how to create the quiz assignment on Moodle, and then later on, I will show you how to assign the questions that you've written to the Moodle quiz. For now, thanks for watching.